how do you take an industry that has been defined by special interests in the past and shift it to an industry that focuses on the satisfaction of the customer or the patient? Part of it is going to be driven by the fact that employee health plans are having much higher deductibles, which means that every year a employee's family are going to probably have to spend out of pocket $5,000 to $8,000 a year before their healthcare copays kick in. That opens up huge opportunities for innovation with price transparency, with new disruptive price services, things that can be delivered with the same technology that's being used in the private sector for financial services, for e-commerce, for many other businesses that have been adopting these technologies for really quite some time. So if you are a transformative leader who wants to build a new business, healthcare is an extraordinarily interesting industry to get into. I've been in healthcare now for 8 years. I have currently 4 healthcare investments, and it's a business that's rapidly changing, and we're having really a great deal of success with each one of these businesses. So disruptive innovation, in this context, I've touched upon the implications of really a new generation of transformative technologies like cloud, like Internet of Things, like unstructured data. I've talked about the implications for the shift in healthcare reimbursement going from a fee-for-service model, which is current policy, to a more affordable and more accurate ability to measure the actual outcomes. And now technology is giving us actually the expectation that we'll really be able to do that, certainly within the decade. And then the ability to start to get private enterprise investors interested in investing in healthcare. And it's been a field that has been avoided to a large extent by the private sector investment community for one simple reason. It's really complicated. And there's nothing particularly logical about healthcare regulations, and they aren't consistent. They're different state by state, and the value chain is complicated. And there are various obligations in terms of compliance that are required and the skills that are required to bring in nurses, nurse practitioners, physician assistants, all of the different supportive skills that are required. All of this stuff is complicated. What I've learned is that while it's complicated, and it does take several years to get domain expertise in this, that there's a lot of interest with people who do have this domain expertise, who want to be part of the solution, not just part of the problem. And so I look at healthcare as perhaps the most interesting giant market. It is, remember, our largest single industry sector in the U.S. economy, as one of the most interesting market opportunities for a disruptive innovator, for someone who wants to come in and practice transformational strategic change, to look at the opportunity systemically. And the skills to do this aren't just domain expertise, but the skills are looking at how do you connect the dots between the ways that healthcare for a particular specialty is delivered today versus how can you connect the dots when you bring in new out-of-the-box technologies, and you can literally disrupt the existing cost structure, because in many cases these are very, very outmoded cost structures that have had almost no innovation attempted in them before. And then how do you combine people who have healthcare experience and get the right people with healthcare experience on your team, and bring in people who may not have healthcare experience but have the domain experience of some of these important disruptive innovation areas, like telecommunications or like cloud computing and unstructured data analytics, these types of skills. How do you bring them together? Well, I'm convinced, because I'm in the process of mentoring several companies who are involved in different aspects of this now, that this is an incredibly exciting place to be spending time learning as well as putting teams together to solve challenging problems. And what might seem like a niche business in a much smaller industry, you can go after fairly specialized areas in healthcare. And because it's a $2.8 trillion industry, these small specialized areas are actually giant, high value, transformational business opportunities.